Daniel Lawrence Whitney walked away from $50 million a year without explanation. One day he sold out football stadiums with a catchphrase everybody knew, and the next he vanished from comedy entirely while his peers kept touring. The man who made Get Her Done a permanent fixture in American culture retreated to a cattle ranch in Nebraska, and nobody outside his inner circle understood why a comedian at his absolute peak would abandon everything. What fans didn't see were the panic attacks before every show, the prescription pills he needed just to walk after hip surgery, or the psychological damage from being trapped inside a tipped porta potty that still haunts him years later. This isn't a story about retiring at the top, and it's definitely not about a graceful exit from show business. Larry the Cable Guy disappeared because staying meant losing his family, his health, and possibly his life. Whitney grew up on 80 acres outside Pawnee City, Nebraska, where his father Tom had once played guitar for the Everly Brothers before becoming a Christian minister. When the family relocated to West Palm Beach in 1979 and his dad took a job as a school principal, 16-year-old Daniel found himself in a completely different world from the rural Midwest he'd always known. Football and drama classes at Berean Christian School led him to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where something unexpected happened in the dorms. His roommates from Texas and Georgia spoke with thick Southern accents that Daniel started imitating as a joke, and over time that borrowed voice became the foundation of his entire career. By his junior year, he dropped out because waiting around for a degree made no sense when comedy clubs were already paying him to perform. Radio gave him his first real break in the early 90s through regular guest spots on The Ron and Ron Show, and that's where the character came together. Loud, opinionated, stuffed with exaggerated rural humor and wild stories told in that thick drawl he'd perfected in college, Larry the Cable Guy connected with audiences who felt ignored by mainstream entertainment. The phrase "Get Her Done" started as throwaway radio filler and turned into his signature line, and by 1995 he was getting booked under that name for live stand-up. Years of dive bars and small clubs followed, perfecting material about small-town America, working-class struggles, and the everyday absurdity of rural living that resonated because his stories came from real experience even if the accent could be turned on and off. Everything changed between 2000 and 2006 when the Blue Collar Comedy Tour alongside Jeff Foxworthy, Bill Engvall, and Ron White became a cultural phenomenon that proved stand-up could fill arenas like rock concerts. The first show in Omaha on January 14, 2000 sold 7,500 tickets, and by the final performance at Washington, D.C.'s Warner Theater in March 2006, they'd played 124 shows for nearly 500,000 people and grossed over $16 million just from ticket sales. That didn't include the DVDs, television specials, and satellite radio channel called Blue Collar Radio that turned the tour into a full-blown media empire. Critics accused Larry of reinforcing negative stereotypes about rural Americans with jokes centered on hunting mishaps and chaotic family gatherings. But his fans saw celebration rather than mockery in material that finally reflected their lives instead of looking down on them. His comedy albums hit platinum status when digital downloads were killing physical sales, which almost never happened anymore. Lord, I Apologize in 2001 and The Right to Bear Arms in 2005 both sold over 1 million copies, with the latter debuting at number 7 on the Billboard 200 and earning a Grammy nomination for Best Comedy Album. Then Pixar cast him as Mater in Cars, and that single role changed his career trajectory in ways stand-up never could. The film grossed over $1 billion worldwide, spawned 2 sequels, and generated billions more in merchandise sales while making Mater one of Pixar's most beloved characters. Larry reportedly made $5 million just for voicing the goofy tow truck in the first film, but the real value came from knowing his kids would always have something to remember him by when the stand-up career eventually ended. Only in America launched on the History Channel in February 2011 and immediately pulled massive ratings. The premiere episode, where Larry made moonshine in the backwoods, drew 4.1 million viewers, setting the stage for 3 seasons of him tackling unusual jobs and American traditions. He wrangled alligators, rode with the Hells Angels, trained with Army snipers, and helped build a medieval castle while somehow making each experience feel genuine rather than staged. Every episode opened with, "Listen up, America, I'm Larry the Cable Guy and I love this country," and audiences ate it up even though the schedule destroyed his personal life. Filming kept him on the road 6 days a week while his sons were 5 and 6 years old, hitting milestones he wasn't there to witness. School events passed without him, important moments came and went, and the strain on his marriage with Kara became impossible to ignore. The Porta Potty episode in 2012 became infamous with viewers, but marked a turning point for Larry personally. Cleaning festival porta potties pushed him beyond what he could justify as entertainment, and getting trapped inside one that tipped over triggered genuine post-traumatic stress disorder that wouldn't go away. Even minor reminders brought back the panic and humiliation years later, which sounds absurd until you understand that trauma doesn't care where it comes from. He walked away from Only in America after season 3, despite massive ratings, because missing his kids' early years wasn't worth chasing numbers anymore, and that decision cost him but also saved what was left of his family. His marriage to Kara Whitney, a former radio DJ from Wisconsin he'd met in Los Angeles in 2004, anchored him through the chaos. They got married on July 3, 2005 in an open Nebraska field for $180 instead of staging some flashy Hollywood ceremony, which tells you everything about what mattered to them. Kara pushed hard for Larry to cut back on touring when she saw how the relentless schedule kept him away from their children Wyatt and Reagan, and in 2015 he finally listened. Going from 287 shows a year down to fewer than 25 meant a 90% reduction in workload, but it gave him time at their ranch to actually be present as a father. Money had never been an issue during his peak years. Between 2006 and 2012, Larry pulled in approximately $50 million annually from stand-up, albums, endorsements, and film work. His 2009 performance in a football stadium made him the first comedian to pull that off since the 80s, and Kevin Hart wouldn't match it until 2015. Real estate investments followed the success, including a $3.6 million home in North Scottsdale, Arizona, with 4 bedrooms, an outdoor kitchen, a golf course, and a pool. Critics pointed out the irony of a multimillionaire still pushing a blue-collar image, and the IRS raised questions about his tax deductions when he tried writing off sleeveless flannel shirts and trucker hats as business expenses. The legal battle dragged on for years, and in 2014, promoters sued him for breach of contract after he canceled several shows due to burnout. Everything started falling apart after 2015 when his bookings dropped 60%. Comedy had shifted toward personal storytelling and social commentary from performers like Bo Burnham and Hannah Gadsby, and Larry's exaggerated redneck character didn't connect with younger audiences the way it once had. His 2020 special Remain Seated didn't capture the cultural moment, and planned network specials got canceled as entertainment executives grew nervous about his brand of humor in an era focused on cultural sensitivity. The money dried up, the stadium tours stopped coming, and the comedian who'd once been everywhere suddenly found himself wondering where he fit. His health collapsed under the weight of performing at 240 pounds. Sleep apnea made every night a struggle for breath as fat around his throat narrowed his airway, and chronic joint pain turned performances into physical torture. By 2018, his hip needed replacement surgery, which brought prescription painkillers into the picture and all the risks that come with opioid use. Studies show 35% of hip replacement patients still take the pills 6 months after surgery, and rumors circulated that Larry was using them for stress management rather than just pain. Anxiety and panic attacks started hitting him before big shows, and the fear of becoming irrelevant added psychological pressure to the physical breakdown. Kara delivered an ultimatum in 2019 that forced a choice he'd been avoiding: change, or lose his family. Years of putting career first had brought them to the breaking point, and no amount of money justified what it was costing their marriage and his relationship with Wyatt and Reagan. Larry cut back further on touring and spent more time at the ranch, accepting that the fast-paced lifestyle wasn't sustainable anymore. Politics pulled him into controversy he probably didn't expect. His 2016 endorsement during the presidential election turned heads when he appeared on Fox and Friends and said, "I'm a Trump man, and when I say Trump man, I mean Gary Johnson," then compared the choice between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton to deciding whether to soil yourself or let someone else do it for you. The Libertarian candidate became his pick by default, expressing genuine frustration rather than just making jokes. When he tweeted about Marjorie Taylor Greene's performance during the 2023 State of the Union address, comparing her to every comedian's ex-girlfriend showing up to heckle from the back after a breakup, conservative fans accused him of going woke. Larry defended the joke as apolitical observation, but the backlash showed how sensitive his audience had become. Now he lives on a Nebraska ranch, raising cattle and hosting charity rodeos through the Get Our Done Foundation he launched with Kara in 2009. The foundation has donated over $7 million to children's hospitals, veterans groups, and families facing medical challenges, including a $5 million contribution to Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children to research hip dysplasia. His involvement with professional bull riders events keeps him connected to the sport he loves, and in April 2024, he introduced a star bull called Mr. Mater at a PBR event in Lincoln, putting up a $10,000 bounty for any rider who could last the full 8 seconds. A Netflix special could mark his return or his farewell to the character that made him famous. Either way, Larry the Cable Guy isn't disappearing quietly.